Hey, sports fans, Coach Nick here, and welcome to the B-Ball Breakdown live show coming at you in an emergency on a Tuesday afternoon because we have some crazy breaking news that happened not long ago that Denver Nuggets coach Mike Malone was fired alongside Calvin Booth, who's the general manager. So I could think of no one better to bring on the show to break this down for us and give us the inside scoop, hopefully, is Adam Mares of the All-NBA with Tim Legler pod and the host of DNVR Nuggets. Adam, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on. Crazy circumstances, but plenty of angles to cover this one.
Oh, well, I've been doing a bit of a deep dive trying to figure out what the heck happened and why. I have some ideas, but I figured, why don't you lay it down and let us know, like, what was going on in the locker room, I suppose, that was happening, because I think the key here is they didn't decide to fire Mike Malone today. So what was going on that led to this decision?
Well, first of all, it wasn't just Michael Malone. They also got rid of Calvin Booth, the GM of the team. So this was a full overhaul of the direction and obviously the vibe. I think when we step back and look at this, number one, Michael Malone's been the coach for 10 years. That's a great run. I think he was the third most tenured coach in the NBA. Obviously won a championship with them 2 years ago. And we know that the reason there aren't coaches around for 10 years or more very often is even great coaches can have a hard time, staying consistent, having guys buy in, all those different things. So the first part of this is 10 years is a long time. Not that crazy when you look at it that way. But the second part is that Calvin Booth took over this team in 2022, and they won a championship that very first year. But he and Michael Malone are both two guys that have strong visions about what direction the team should go, and those visions did not necessarily align. And there was tension from year one. They still win a title, but there was really tensions in year 2 and 3, culminating with this. And I think what happened, Stan Kroenke's been around for the last month and a half or so. You could tell, knows there's tension, knows the team isn't quite living up to what they believed their potential was. And I believe just observing everything, saying there's a problem, let me get to the bottom of it. And I think after that observation, he looks around and says, I have 2 guys that you need organizational alignment from your front office and your head coach. Mm-hmm. You need that to survive in the NBA. Irreconcilable differences between these two, and probably blame to go on both sides. So to me, the timing is interesting, and we could talk about that. But to me, I think that was the Kroenkes deciding this was not going to get better with these two. Do you go for one of them or both? They went for both.
Fair enough. And certainly if that doesn't work and they're not getting along, then yes, like a change is important. But that's the kind of change that you do in the summer, after the season's over, and certainly not like a couple of games before the playoffs start. So we can get into that. But I think that there must have been an added layer of locker room dysfunction is what it also could sound like. Now, and again, it also sounds like maybe Coach Malone was, is the term fiery? Would that be a good term to describe him?
The fiery. I think that's correct. He is the fiery. But so you're absolutely right. So you have this broader problem about the direction of the team, the vibe. And I know that word almost sounds like a buzzword, the vibes. What is this about vibes? But around a team and around an organization, there is a culture that's important to cultivate, especially when you're trying to win. It doesn't mean everybody has to be best friends, but you have to have some semblance of alignment, of vision, and collaboration. And I think they knew going into this year that wasn't the case. Can it be fixed? It was not fixed throughout the course of the season. So to your point, I think it was a thing that this was coming this summer. I'd even set the table for this, that it was very possible, maybe even likely, that both guys is out the door once this run is over, whatever happens this year. But I think that what this signals to me, the team has fallen apart over the last couple of weeks. I mean, they were looking after the All-Star break. There was a moment in time, maybe they were about to get it going, fell apart, lost 4 games in a row, most recently, fell from the 2 seed or the 3 seed all the way down. My camera's on the fritz here. I'll try to get it fixed. But fell now to where they are potentially going to fall into the play-in and maybe even down to the 8 seed. And I think this move signals that the Kroenkes and maybe the team believes in some small way that this season is salvageable, that the direction they were going, you could see the end. First round, second round exit, but they were not going to compete for a championship this year. Making the move with 1 week to go, to me, signals at least some belief that, hey, we can't punt on this season. We can't punt on Jokic's best season ever, even though it's a tiny little, opportunity for things to go well. Let's at least give it a shot, because we know what the alternate version of this, if we stay the course, we know how that ends. Let's give ourselves a chance.
Well, let's bring in co-host Andrew Combo South to join us. Combo, what's going on, my man?
All is well. What's up, Coach Nick? Adam, it's been a while, man. I think it was Summer League maybe last time.
My guy, man. Combo. How you doing, brother? Good to see you.
All is well. This is the craziest NBA I've ever seen. I mean, like after all these things we've seen, Luka to the Mavericks, Taylor Jenkins being fired. Now this, is it any less surprising because of the season we've had?
It's when Taylor Jenkins was fired, I'm sure you guys were saying the same thing as me, which was this late in the season, what are we doing? There's no runway. So to one up that by 2 weeks, to wait 2 more weeks and say, okay, there's 3 games, David Adelman, go figure it out, to me it's an all-timer. I think they said it was a record. The latest a coach has been fired, tied for a record in NBA history.
It was tied. I saw that, but I didn't see. Oh, Hubie Brown. That's right.
Hubie Brown.
In the 80s. Really, and that's sad that Hubie Brown should never have been treated like that either. I have to look back and remember back in my early days why that would have happened. But so here's the thing, because obviously from my point of view as a coach, I'm always kind of looking at the X's and O's and the on-court stuff. Because, certainly the GM thing is interesting. I actually had originally thought maybe the ownership had said, fire Mike Malone to Calvin Booth. And Calvin Booth's like, no, I'm not going to do that. And I'm like, okay, you're fired too. But it sounds like Calvin Booth would not have had any issue firing Mike Malone at any moment of the season. Is that fair to say?
He might have made it the recommendation, and I feel strongly saying that he would have been on board with that decision. So no, it's not. That's not the scenario.
Okay, because I did want to bring in. I do have the clip of Mike Malone after the Portland game when they lost. I don't know if you want to even set this up. This is with Mike Malone after the game. Let me just grab it right here. I thought it'd be interesting to hear it because this will be my next thing here. But let's put it on here real quick, Adam, and we'll go back to what your reaction to it is.
I think each guy's got to look themselves in the mirror and start coming to each respective game with the proper mindset and have some pride. I didn't think we played with any pride tonight.
How do you feel like they took that?
I really care. It's not my job to evaluate how they take things. My job is to be honest and sometimes brutally honest. And tonight it was a brutally honest message. And the guys that are full of shit won't hear it. They'll say coach is tripping. And the guys that maybe do really care will. Because they're not going to go back and watch their minutes because nobody watches their minutes. Nobody watches film. So we'll have to show them the film. And I said, if somebody disagrees with me, please speak up. And nobody said a word. So again, I'm not really concerned with how they took that message. My thing is being honest with how we just played.
All right. So is he talking to anybody in particular, Adam?
I think he's talking to the whole team. And first of all, let me just say that Michael Malone, 10 years, he's always been that guy. And I give him a lot of respect for it. I mean, you were talking about from a coaching angle, X's and O's. That's obviously a huge part of it. Leadership is another huge part of coaching. And I think Michael Malone has always been a guy who is willing to be provocative to his players when the moment calls for it, at least in these types of moments. So for me, I did not see that as a sign of, he's about to be fired or this or that. Because he's always been that guy. But is he talking to anybody? To me, the part that stands out the most is I made that comment and no one spoke up. And I think that's the part where you look at this and go, even if that's the right button, forget whether it was right or wrong. If that was the right button to push and nobody's responding to it, it shows you that the message has run its course and that maybe there's no other cards to play.
Yeah, dysfunction sounds like something was going on in the locker room as well. I mean, you see little tiny things. I believe we saw Aaron Gordon getting into it with somebody on the bench, which again, it could just be, your typical stuff. But, in this context, it might not be. But I just kind of wonder, especially because, this is, Adam, you might not know, supposedly I have some sort of agenda, and it's an agenda against a specific player for all years. And I take no pleasure in pointing out the things that I saw then that I still see now. But I quickly went to the box score. I'm just kind of curious because he's talking about somebody, right? It seems like, who isn't looking at their film and watching and studying it to get better? And I suspect I know that. And, you took one look at the box score, you see 9 turnovers from Russ. And I actually looked at the turnovers. Maybe perhaps, is it possible that Mike is happy that he's not there when you go through some of the turnovers you see from Russ?
Look, Russ, I think, is a frustrating person to coach. I think that's a difficult task, no matter who the coach is. And that certainly added to, I think, the challenges that Malone entered this season on. he certainly, I'm sure, was referencing him. If I were to guess specifically when he says our guys don't watch film, I would guess he meant the younger players. Because veterans, you count on them to know what they're supposed to do and at least to have some intuition. But I think he's looking more at the younger guys that were required to make this whole process work. Your Christian Browns, Peyton Watsons, Julian Strathers, the guys that were, hey, we have an expensive starting five, so we need to bring in young guys, but they need to graduate quickly. They need to move further along. And as you watch him coach throughout the year, Russ still played a lot of minutes. The starters still played a lot of minutes. It was that bench group that you knew he didn't have their trust. And so when he says something like that, to me, he's very principled. Whatever you think of Michael Malone, he's very principled. And I think he looks at that and says, why do you think you should play just for tenure? Why do you think you should play out of necessity? You need to do the work. And we have guys out there that are not watching their film or this or that and laying it at their feet. And I think there's at least some truth to that.
How much of this season struggles, because obviously Michael Malone is talking about the professionalism, and we've seen a few years now that Jamal Murray has not come into the season in shape. How much of the struggles fall on Jamal here?
To me, an enormous amount. And if we just step back for a second since the bubble, and again, my camera, I don't know what's overheating or something, but it should be back shortly. If we just go back to the bubble, Jamal Murray fully healthy. They're locked inside Disney World. He's playing the best basketball of his career. The next year he comes in a little out of shape. He ends up getting hurt late, misses the next 2 years. And it's like, okay, we're in Jokic's prime. He wins 2 MVPs, but we have to sacrifice. It's understandable. When he came back, by the way, they thought he might be back for the playoffs in 2022. Doesn't make it back. Understandable. Young guy coming back from ACL. Take your time. But then in October, he wasn't quite ready to go. And you sit there and say, like, on the timeline, you might have been ready in April, but now it's October and you're still not fully ready to go. And it follows the pattern that existed prior to the injury, where he would slowly ramp up throughout the course of the year and then be ready by the playoffs. He does get ready. They win a championship. The very next year comes in out of shape again. And it's the same thing. You look at his numbers in October, November, December, 18 points, 17 points, just not a true running mate. Nowhere. We thought after that bubble run, when he had a 30-point triple-double in the finals, we thought, okay, he's over the hump. This is a perennial all-star because that's how talented he is. Next year, he's nowhere close to that. And he works his way into shape. The Nuggets get rolling once he's in shape around January. They had an incredible January, February, March, and then he gets hurt in April again. And again, I think you look at that pattern and say, you can do this where you kind of get ready throughout the course of the year, but your injury risk goes through the roof. Well, we go to this year, same thing. October, November, 16 points, 18 points a game. Okay, Jokic is shouldering an enormous load. And not only that, but when you have a second superstar, the task for that player is to get the bench along. So you have these young guys that need to find their footing. Our second star carries the bench. That's just the natural way. He wasn't able to do that. It created some tension throughout the course of the year. Jokic playing in 39 minutes a night for the first 2 months of the year. And then once again, Jamal Murray gets hurt late in the year. So I think you just look at this and say, this is a pattern that has happened now for 5 straight seasons. And I do think that put a strain on the team. It's not the only reason this happened, but I do think it put a strain on everybody involved that led to decisions like this.
Yeah, I mean, even with that, it shouldn't have happened, right? I mean, he just won a championship. He has won 60% of his games coached on this team. It really just doesn't make that much sense. Is there more to this that we just don't know, you think?
I don't think so. I mean, I think it's just a read on, losing the locker room, so to speak. What does that mean? I don't know that there was a moment, a confrontation, a personal differences amongst like a key player, but I do think it was a general loss of, the team wasn't following where he was going and they weren't responding. And this is a team that, again, won a championship 2 years ago, but has slowly regressed. And I think you just look at that and say, there's 2 people that were involved at arriving us here. Calvin Booth with the roster he built and the vision he set out and was unwavering from. Michael Malone and the diminishing returns on that leadership and his own inability to move on from his corner and his decisions. And when you combine those 2 together, you have a team that is talented as Denver. There's nobody questions their talent, but that is not getting the most out of it and seems to be going the wrong direction as opposed to ascending to title contention.
I mean, in Booth's defense, when you win a title like that, you get screwed because you got to pay the role players, and so they had, $150 million locked up with MPJ, right? Murray and who am I looking at? Gordon, right? Plus, they had to trade first-round picks to kind of get that together, right? So I feel bad for a lot of that happening. You see that happen all the time where it's like you win that title and then all of a sudden you get stuck into these long-term contracts. And then I think Jokic is coming up in a couple of years, right? He's got a player option maybe in a couple of years, which is going to be, I mean, how much is Jokic going to end up commanding? 60 million a year, something crazy like that? 50?
There's not a number you can put on it that would be equal to his value. So that number is whatever it is, it's a discount.
Yeah. And so, but if you're looking for that, then one of the big issues you have to look at is the record and are they winning as much? They were in third place and they was kind of moving in that position where they're going to wait for Jamal to come back and be there. So I have to imagine things must have accelerated kind of quickly as they dropped down into the, where are we now? The 6th spot in the West? Where are they?
Yeah. I honestly think it just comes down to, if you look at this season, Jokic is as good as he's ever been. He's just so unbelievably dominant. You have pieces. I think they just look at it and say, are we going to throw away the 2025 playoff race? Because right now, if you told me this firing didn't happen and you asked me, and I've been talking about this, what are the Nuggets' chances of making it to the Western Conference Finals? Forget winning the championship, the Western Conference Finals. I would say 10%. I mean, they have a better chance right now, it felt like, of losing in the first round than they did of ascending to the conference finals, let alone the finals and then to win it all. So I think they just looked at it and said, we know how this story ends with the status quo. We can do the plan, fire them both, in May 15th, right after the first or second round of the playoffs, we'll fire them. Or we can say we have an all-time great at the height of his prime. And if there's even a 1% chance that making this move gives the team some kind of inspiration, we'll take it just to not waste the season.
I mean, here's my only problem with that is when they were healthy, right? When you actually, the glimpses that we did get of the real starting five, I just quickly checked their net rating is +10, which is dominant, which is good. It felt like you could see enough evidence where they could really compete with anybody. Am I off on that for this year?
Well, +10 in the Jokic era is actually down. If you look at them in years past, it's usually a +12, +13, +14. But the problem was never that. I mean, Jokic is such a phenomenally consistent player and can do so many things that you almost can't judge them based on when he's on the court. You have to judge everything else that's going on, every other configuration of it. And I think more importantly, you have to judge the team's record. This is not a team that should finish south of 50 wins. I know it's a loaded Western Conference, but you should not finish south of 50. They will this year. So I think it was more that than again, any number you throw Jokic on the court, you're going to say, oh, wow, it worked out with you have Jokic out there. We have 10 years of data and almost no net ratings with Jokic on the floor that are anything south of +7.
Right. I still just can't get over the fact that, like, I would have looked at that. I would look at the evidence that we've seen of they're going to cause a lot of problems for a lot of teams when they're healthy like that. And again, it's the timing. It's not necessarily that they did it, and you understand it. Especially when you said after like 10 years, who was it? Was it Buzz, the college coach Buzz Williams, who was saying after 6 years, get the heck out of there? But
Larry Bird had a better one. He said no NBA player listens to their coach for more than 3 years. And I thought, well, if that's the legend Larry Bird saying that, then what hope does anyone else have?
Any insights on the relationship when it comes to Michael Malone, the front office, the governors?
Well, I mean, again, those two in big conflict with each other. I think the two hated each other.
What was the conflict specifically about, if you know?
Yeah, it's vision. They both are very strong-minded. My vision is correct, and I make the calls. And there were moves that Calvin made. Forget the personnel for a second. There were moves to structure how he thought the organization should run that Michael Malone disagreed with, and then went into conflict with. I gave an example of bringing in a shooting coach of, hey, this is our guy. We need to get better at shooting. Shooting's such a big part of it. Put him in the gym. Michael Malone said, I don't hire that guy. You hired him. That's not my guy, and I'm the coach. So he's not a coach. That's a separate entity. You guys, go ahead.
Sorry, does Michael Malone not want a shooting coach at all, or was it that specific shooting coach?
I think it was the idea of, if you were hiring a shooting coach, the coach would hire that person. That this is a coaching move, not a front office decision. So It's just an example, one of many examples I can give you of how deep that conflict went. And if you think about setting up a good program, a good organization, those types of things can't happen. Like, forget the alignment about player personnel. Structurally, how you run your day to day, if it has that much conflict in it, how can you create clarity? And then more importantly, it's impossible to hide that conflict. This is not a conflict that was like, oh, a couple of us know the story of, but it's kept away from the kids. This is one that permeated the entire building. Everyone knew the tension, and I think it was not a happy place to work or exciting place to go into, a place that people believed in where it was going. And then when you get to personnel, some of this is Tim Conley signed 3 max contracts. Nikola Jokic, no brainer. Jamal Murray at the time, I think no brainer, the first one. And Michael Porter Jr., which I think that one was obviously pretty questionable, and I don't think he's a max player. So when you lock into 3 maxes, the moves are the margins. You no longer have the big flexibility to build around your roster. Michael Porter, they signed him to that max contract, and he had a back surgery immediately. So that became an untradeable contract since the moment they signed it. So when you have that, their margin moves, and Calvin Booth's theory was, we don't have a lot of money to spend. We need depth. We're going to bring in Christian Brown, Peyton Watson, Jalen Pickett, Julian Strawther, and we need those guys to graduate in a year and a half. We need them to graduate to be able to be rotational playoff players. Michael Malone, I don't think ever invested himself in that vision. And those guys didn't develop. Maybe they weren't capable of doing it. It's possible Michael Malone saw the writing and said, that's not a plan that even makes sense, but he never invested in it. Last year, there were games where they needed a point guard and they played Colin Gillespie, who was on a 2-way contract. Good player. I like him. But on a 2-way contract with Pickett getting a DNP. And so you look at that and say, if you were trying to develop this pattern, you would not play a 2-way player over the guy that was part of the stated goal of, we need to get this guy up to speed. So it was things like that where you see the conflict. One person had a vision they sent with the roster. Another person said, I'm not doing that. I'm not even giving it a chance. And you arrive here.
And I like Pickett, by the way. And I was thinking, like, okay, Russ is going to be a thing where he's just too inconsistent. Like, where would you get someone who's not going to kill you and can give you good energy and all that stuff that Russ brings? And that he would be the guy, I would think. Do you have a minute to go over a couple questions from the audience, Adam?
Let's hear him.
All right, let's go. Well, Scoldylocks, thank you so much, Scoldy. Really, really appreciate it. He says, Malone isn't the problem. What was this team supposed to do with the roster this flawed? Half of the rotation players can't shoot. What is your response to that, Adam?
Well, the shooting part of this, I think, is very important. And obviously, this is a shooter's league. I think you can space the court, especially with Nikola Jokic, with less shooting than most teams, meaning I think that he makes it marginally less valuable. But there's still a baseline level of shooting that you need that the Nuggets are, in my opinion, below. But the first part of it, the Malone isn't the problem. I agree. But I do think that you're going to see, I think that there will be a good portion of this roster that is excited that the move was made. I'll leave it at that.
Interesting. Well, okay. So now, by the way, they're like 5th in 3-point percentage.
3-point percentage because they're very efficient at it. They're low in field goal attempts, but this is the Jokic offense, right? It's just maximum optimization. What are we capable of doing? We're going to be able to get to that as much as anybody. And so that includes low volume threes, but they're always good ones.
What was Jokic's relationship with Michael Malone?
I can't speak to he's such a guarded guy and I wouldn't want to speak for him in this regard, but I think Jokic is the type of guy who is probably less bothered by coaching frustrations than the average player. I think that's part of what makes Jokic so special is, hey, this is my leader and I don't have to agree with him, but that's, we can make it work. So my hunch is that Jokic is more neutral to this, but I don't know that I do not think the organization would have made this move if they thought it would upset him, especially a player like that. You never want them to go into a free agency or to a summer and be discontent. So my hunch is they calculated that and at least felt it was worth the risk.
Let's get to another question we have from Joe B. Thank you so much, Joe. We are officially living in a simulation. I'm still processing the Taylor Jenkins news, and then this news drops. What TF?
My thoughts exactly when this dropped. Yeah.
Could they be connected? Is it possible Taylor Jenkins is a very highly sought after coach and maybe would have signed, maybe it's something of,
or just,
hey, just no. Because I would ask you guys this question. Isn't Denver right now the number one opening in the NBA? Jokic is in his absolute prime. He's the easiest superstar to work with. You're not going to get some of the other stuff you get with superstars. Isn't Denver, every available coach is thinking, how do I get there?
Wow. Yeah, that's why you're here, Adam. That's a great point. Now, is it related to Taylor Jenkins? I mean, everyone was saying, oh, he's going to get hired right away. Like that someone's going to grab him. Fascinating. You think that maybe they're like, let's get him before anybody else starts talking in his ear and we can start recruiting him now?
At least make it known that there is this other opening so that your agent is looking around and saying, what would be great if Jokic to me is a top 10 player of all time, or we'll finish that if he can get some wins. You need now the only thing left for Jokic is the resume. So if you can have a top 10 player all time in his prime, who, by the way, is not going to cause you any distractions off the court in any way. He will actually be a leader of your vision, whatever that is. He will lead the way. To me, that's the number one job. So maybe it was a thing of, I want every coach to know. I don't want any coach signing anything in April because they committed, they didn't see the market. This is the market. We have the job. We want the best person available.
Wow.
Couldn't I argue that Michael Malone will be more sought after than Taylor Jenkins?
Do you think so?
He just won a championship. Not too
He did
long
win.
ago. Less than 2 years ago.
It'll be interesting to see. I think people know Michael Malone. Like I said, I don't want it to sound like I'm low on Michael Malone. I think he's a great coach. I think he's a really good leader. He has a strong sense of true north. Like, he knows what things a team are non-negotiable, and he hammers and leads in those ways extremely well, communicates those things extremely well. We'll see. He runs hot, and I think that's the flip side of this, is that he is, I think if you're hiring Michael Malone, you know that there's only so much influence you're going to have over him. All coaches are stubborn, but I think he's a guy that you're going to hire him to do his job and his vision, not collaborate with you.
Maybe the Memphis Grizzlies need a little bit of discipline.
But it's possible that the discipline has to be received. The NBA is in this weird inverted space where the players do have more power than the coaches. So it is, it's a difficult dynamic.
Well, listen, Adam, you've given us more time than you even thought we'd get you from you. I really appreciate it. I know you got to be, your hair's on fire, busy dealing with all this stuff. So I can't thank you enough for being here and being part of the show and really giving us more information and deeper than we get from anyone else. So thank you so much. Tell the good people out there where they can find you and make sure that they can keep up to date with all the stuff that's going on.
Yeah, for Nuggets coverage, DNVR Nuggets, and for a daily breakdown of the games the night before, me and Tim Legler do the All NBA show on YouTube, which is a really fun thing. Legs is the best. You guys won't want to miss it. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it, man.
Great stuff.
Later.
Thanks so much, Adam. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, we have our soundbite at least now with the Taylor Jenkins thing that he just sort of brought up for the reel, right?
Yeah, I think there's some good stuff in there. I'm always keeping that in mind.
Yeah. So we have a couple more super chats from Joe we got to get to. So I'll get to that in a second. But I'm intrigued. I also was intrigued by this notion of they hired a shooting coach without Malone's input, and kind of just didn't want to deal with that either in a way, which is, it's never a good idea to throw a coach into a coaching situation. But I also think it's indicative of the fact that many coaches, even championship coaches, don't always have their choice of who they want to be on their coaching staff.
I think, like, from what I hear, it's only Ty Lue. That's what
Control?
What?
Who has complete control over who gets hired?
I think he has a lot of control. There's probably some people that I'm missing. I mean, the Heat probably come to mind, right? With Spo and Pat Riley are probably pretty much in lockstep. But there's not a lot. There's not a lot of teams like that.
But it's insane because you're talking about people who are going to be sitting right next to you for an entire year straight. Like, why you wouldn't be in charge of that is crazy.
So let me ask you this. They try and bring in a shooting coach. Does Michael Malone, should his mindset be like, yes, this is not my guy, but I should try and make it work? Or should he feel disrespected, like you're trying to bring in some guy that I don't know? Like, which is the right mindset to have? I mean,
obviously, the right mindset to have is, hey, this is what it is. Let's make it work, right? And I think it's also weird for a shooting coach specifically. How does that end up upsetting the cart a lot? It probably exacerbated the relationship, which is already the big problem here between GM and coach. But on the court, I don't know if it really had any effect necessarily, right? I mean, they're shooting great.
Yeah. What if what if also, like, everybody has their own ideas about shooting? What if you just disagree with what he's teaching? That's like a whole other thing,
Yeah. That's a problem.
Yeah. You definitely have to I think you have to have a meeting with the coach and the shooting coach before you hire him.
For sure.
Yeah.
Did Adam make it clear that didn't happen?
That's what it seemed like. I don't know. I don't want to speak for Adam. What's going
fair
on?
Enough. But by the way, if you're looking at, like they're shooting at fourth or fifth best percentage in the league, but they're actually dead last in frequency. They're just not taking a lot of threes. That's the coach, right? Shot profile.
Well, you're right. Shot profile is the coach, but it's also a Jokic-dominated offense, right? And I know he gives it up quick, but I mean, he's controlling a lot, and he's not shooting a lot of threes himself. So I don't know.
I don't know. It's interesting because I mean, I can kind of dig into that and look at why they didn't get more threes.
I'm sure they get more post touches than any other team. So that takes some of the shot profile down towards the rim, right? Because Jokic is there.
I guess, but that's going to draw a lot of activity. Then you get the kickouts for the really good threes.
I agree.
The question is, yes, if you're a top 5 percentage team, do you mind if you're so by the way, what's the difference between the 30th ranked frequency and the not? 35.6% of their shots are threes. The number one team is the Celtics at 54%, right? That's a huge gap. But if you're talking about middle of the road, they're 7 points behind the Bucks, who look like they're in the middle. So that's interesting. But even still, I just kind of want to see their overall offense. I bet you is top. Let's look here. It's got to be top 8. Let's see here. The Nuggets are the fourth in offense. It can't be anything related to offense in my mind. Then now, if it's result based, which is what Adam was also saying in terms of they lost games they shouldn't. Like if you lose a game to Portland, who didn't have a lot of their starters, and I know that the Nuggets didn't either. That's one of those moments you're like, wait, what the heck is going on? How do you lose to Portland? And it wasn't close down the stretch. So that could be one of the rumblings that began, and that was not that long. That was about 3 weeks ago. So maybe that's the beginning of the end right there.
I think usually when you win a championship less than 5 years ago, back in the old NBA, at least you used to have some kind of immunity, right? Especially to a team that never won a chip.
You're supposed to, but like Frank Vogel, same thing, right? Who else? Budenholzer. They all had championships right pretty close to when they got fired, right?
Yeah, I guess the question is, did Vogel's championship come with an asterisk?
Yeah, it did.
Oh, you think?
I used to waffle, whatever. They're all asterisks, right? But I think that one deserves one. But anyway,
well, when we're talking about LeBron, you got to count it for Bron, right?
Right. Well, the mistake the Lakers made also is by getting rid of those role players that really were instrumental for them. So we don't really know, because the way you'd know if it was a real asterisk, I suppose, would be if after that they kept most of the team intact and they never got anywhere close to the Western Conference Finals or anywhere close to the title again. That would probably be your example. But they got rid of KCP, they got rid of Kuzma. So we don't really know at that point whether they could have, if it was that or not. But
right, like if they made the finals, even if they lost, it still gives validity to that.
Yeah, Western Conference Finals, but they didn't make the playoffs in a couple of those years right after that, and there was injuries, whatever. But Joe B is back with us a couple more times, and don't forget, if you want us to answer your question, the YouTube, the chat on the YouTube side, super chat is the best way to go. So Joe B says, team wins title, then said title team has to pay the role players secondary starters. It's the classic disease of more. Exactly what I was saying before is that, you got to reward the guys and you got to give them those contracts, MPJ and all this stuff. I mean, I guess you don't have to. And we saw the Mavericks try not to do it after they won in 11, and that blew up as well. So it's a damned if you are, damned if you don't kind of thing. And I don't know how you manage that other than, and you could say, well, the star ends up being the guy that can kind of, overcome that stuff. And Jokic is not yet to be able to do that. Maybe the problem was the Murray thing. The Murray thing with him getting injured and then not being available, I think hurts them the most at his best is what they're missing.
That's probably if Murray comes into the season in shape, I think this does look different at this point.
Yeah. And then by the way, Russ plays less minutes, because I was doing a video. I'm looking at that going, the inconsistency of Russ and also the volatility of Russ contributes to this. However much we don't know. And so if I do a video on it, I'm like, well, crap, am I just going to light Russ on fire the whole time? And we know there's a lot of things going on. I will say, though, that when you go through Russ's turnovers, and remember, as a coach, turnovers are the things you really don't want, right? They happen, and you don't mind them as much when they're dead ball turnovers or when, the guy had the right idea in mind. But I don't know if you're prepared, Combo. I could just do the montage of his turnovers, and you'd be like, what am I going to do here?
I guarantee if you do that video, it's viewed well. Guaranteed.
It might get a lot of views, but I'll get a lot of angry people. But that said, people have finally realized this is what I was talking about with Russ the whole time.
Wait, is this the real reason why Coach Michael Malone got fired? And it's just like like a silhouette of Russ, but it's Russ.
I don't even know if I need a silhouette at this point. Everyone knows who I'm talking about. But I guess
but it'll be good. You should just do it. Just do it. Just leave.
You won't believe. Like he goes up to shoot a layup and the ball ends up like in the rafters, like loon ball into the stands. It's like, what are we doing here? What is it going on? And like just throwing the ball to the other team, and then he threw a ball over Jokic's head on a sideline out of bounds and then proceeds to scream and yell at the referee because the guy guarding the inbounder, guarding Russ, he thought was too close to him. And so he keeps saying, it's on you, ref, not me for throwing it away. I mean, it's outrageous the things that he does out there.
First ballot Hall of Famer, though, right?
Yeah. You got he at least with the highlights and the overwhelming athletic ability. When you see that, you're like you can walk away saying
The stats.
that guy. But that said, you can also walk away saying that Russ might be the worst player that makes the Hall of Fame.
Coach Nick, that's crazy, man. Coach Nick.
Someone's got to be the worst player in the Hall of Fame, right?
There's a lot of players that have not had even a spectacular NBA career because of the international thing too.
Right. And meanwhile, I'm saying that, what's his face? Kevin made it and he didn't.
I mean,
so what
with all due, I don't even want to name the people that he's better than because that's disrespectful.
Well, okay, listen, if you want to say he's better than Kuzi, I mean, yeah, because it's
no. There's more modern players that he's definitely better than, but I don't even want to say it, because that's just disrespectful to Hall of Famers, I think.
I mean, listen, to be the worst Hall of Famer is amazing, and you're better than everybody in the world ever, except for a few people. So, what do you want?
Coach Nick, he's not the worst Hall of Famer.
Okay, we'll have to have that. We'll have a discussion. I mean, okay, you probably. I mean, do you have anybody in mind you want to shout out right now? No.
Nah, I don't want to say.
I mean, you're probably right. You're probably right.
Yeah.
Whatever. But I'm just saying that, like, skill level stuff, that's not his strong suit, right?
Skill. I mean, he averaged a triple double. Rebounding's a skill.
Right.
Passing's a skill.
I mean, I'm looking at it this way. He can't shoot threes. He never finished more than the average at the rim. Doesn't have a floater game. What he doesn't really do anything particularly well. Like
how about Prime Russ? He wasn't good.
Prime Russ was the same. He didn't shoot threes well. He didn't have any kind of mid-range. Okay, so the mid-range he liked the pull-up. I think that was my memory goes. It wasn't even. It wasn't like the KD level of mid-range percentages. He was okay. So great. He was just so overwhelmingly athletic, right? And that was really the key to him. And he got a lot of assists, but he would balance some of those with turnovers and confounding plays. Like his whole career, he'd been doing that. So anyway, Russ is a very polarizing player, and I apologize if you were a huge fan and are upset to hear any kind of anything non.
I'm not a huge fan. I just don't think he'll be the worst Hall of Famer.
And just remember, as a coach, the kind of volatility he brings to the game is like the thing that you do not want to have. You don't want to have that, even if at the best of times. It's just all over the place. It's an experience, and as a it's a team. That's not what you don't want, especially when you get to the highest levels. Into the conference finals. So you cannot have that if you want to win. So
there was the real clip. If you want.
There you go. So Joe B is back. Sorry for the delay, but thank you so much, Joey. Really, really generous on these super chats today. Phil Jackson's 7-year theory states that a coach will only have the attention of a team for that length of time before guys stop listening to them. I mean, yes, it's also a cop out to be like, after 7 years, it's what am I going to do? Like, is there a way to navigate that? I mean, there has to be. Coaches that coached for longer and had success.
It's a different era, though.
Well, Malone was 10 years, and but maybe what was it, his 7th year when he wins? Probably in the last 3, or no, it's less than that. It was 8th year that he wins, right?
Yeah, 8th year, yeah.
So, so he did it. He got past that 7-year itch, whatever you want to call it.
That was the hill, and then it was down.
Okay, fine, yeah. So it's 7, 8, whatever, yeah. And by the way, it's probably right, no matter what. You know what I mean? When I would bring coaches in to help me when I was coaching my high school team, I would love it because they're not listening to my voice for a little while, right? And that's really important because of that exact reason at whatever level you're on. So I get it. And what's funny is that the coaching at like the high school level and the college level and the pro level, there are massive differences, but there is a sort of fundamental relationship between a coach and a player that exists across all those. And certainly the notion of the droning on and talking so much, whatever, and they tune you out after X amount of time is definitely there. And in the high school, it's not as much because you only have them for 3 years or for whatever it is, or in college less at this point. So it is a little bit more of a unique situation to the pros where you might have a player or a series of players for that long. But that said, in the new NBA, you don't, right? The roster's flipped so much that at some point you probably don't really have money more than a couple players with you for more than 3 or 4 years at a time. So it's interesting, but Spo is another guy. He's been there for how long? 12 years?
More, I think.
Yeah. Have they tuned him out? Maybe.
By
the way, is Spo safe?
Depends on how long Pat's there. It depends on how long Pat's there.
I guess, but we would have said there's no way Mike Malone gets fired now. Like, who knows?
I mean, I always looked at Spo and Pop more safe than anybody else.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Listen, I mean, Pop is probably the only guy, but either way. Well, anyway, this is a great show. Really great to have Adam on here too to break some stuff down. I think we got some interesting insights, and we had a lot of people here, so that was great for all of you to join us, and really appreciate it. So, Combo, I think we haven't found out anything more about Taylor Jenkins, right? It's been completely whatever we learned the first minute is what we know now.
That's all we know, man.
And who knows if we ever find out more about.
But
this.
like the Ja reports with him are like conflicting. Like you hear different stuff from everywhere. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know if he
said, Jokic, if he had said no, keep Malone, then he would.
I feel like the Jokic would be the one guy like keep me out of this.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Or keep me out of this. Right. So anything short of no, do not fire him is like, okay, we're going to.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I wasn't there, but that feels like he doesn't want to get involved with stuff like this. I don't know. Just like
for sure.
Yeah,
I'm sure that sounds as reasonable as any other explanation. So
yeah.
I don't think anything had to do with Jokic, except for the fact that they probably just kind of ran it by him. And again, had he said absolutely not, you better not get rid of him, then maybe they would have had to keep him. But that clearly did not happen. So here he is. Here we are. Anyway, Coach Malone has always been very nice to me. I wish him the absolute best, and I believe he'll.
Yeah, shouts to Coach Malone. He was when I was at Manhattan College basketball camp. He was one of the counselors for years. Nice guy.
Oh wow!
I was a kid. Yeah, he was
New Yorker.
I remember him being like a real cool dude. So
yeah, he's a cool dude. I think he's got a temper. I think he's got he's volatile.
I never saw it at basketball camp. So
I never either, but it sounds like he'll let you know what's going on. And like we saw in that little clip, it depends on how people react to that or not. But we'll see what happens. But anyway, I'm gonna get work on that video, so stay tuned for that this week. Hopefully, tomorrow it should be out. And don't forget, sports fans and B-Ball Breakdown. We're not a channel. We're a conversation. You in? Are you in, Combo?
Yes, sir.